Welcome to the Translators Podcast. We have two stand-up comedians on this episode and our talented friend, Anthony Palmini, to help us out with the opening question.
Thanks for zooming in for this important moment, Anthony.
No problem, guys. But just a heads up, if my connection freezes, I'm not going to reschedule.
Okay, so we should probably hurry up and get the question out.
And here it is. What Latino stand-up was ranked number 74 on Comedy Central's list of the 100 greatest stand-ups of all time?
74, really? You couldn't find someone in the top 50?
The clock is ticking.
Okay. I'm going to say Fluffy, Gabriel Iglesias.
This list is from 2004, so Gabriel wasn't well known at that time.
You're looking at a list from 2004? You know what? I refuse to answer now. And not just because I don't know the answer.
Well, the answer is Paul Rodriguez.
Yo, that dude is old school. Yo, good question, Ant. A little dated, but, you know, it got the job done. So let's start the show. Stand-up has always been something that every Latino uncle,
every loud person at the barbershop, and every one of your ugly friends thinks that they would be good at.
Jimmy, you actually started as a stand-up comedian, right? I mean, what was your best joke?
Okay, I would go up, introduce myself. I'm Jaime Fernandez. I don't just do comedy, I'm also trying to act. But it's hard because the only roles I get offered are drug dealer roles. And I can't wait for the day I get offered the role of a doctor or a lawyer who deals drugs on the side.
Wow, not bad.
See, that was the punchline.
Yeah. Do you have any bad ones?
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty bad one where I was trying to pick up a cute homeless girl. Yeah, I was like, hey, yo, mommy, what shelter you staying at tonight?
Okay.
Nobody liked that one. Yeah.
Unlike Jaime, Latinos have been very successful at stand-up.
Hey.
The best ones really show the hilarious sides of our culture, our family, and even stereotypes that no other medium can.
You can even go back to Mexican comic legend Cantinflas, who wasn't a stand-up in the conventional sense, but he did get his start performing in calpas, or tent theaters.
Tent theaters? Was he performing at Coachella?
No, Mike. Anthony, can you explain, please?
Yes. At the time, tent theaters were Mexico's version of vaudeville.
Then the next big Latino comedian was Freddie Prinze. Anthony, again, give us some information on him.
Sure. Freddie Prinze, aka Frederick Carl Pretzel, would introduce himself to audiences as a Hungarican, not a hungry Rican, which is what we call Jaime when he tried intermittent fasting.
If you're gonna roast me for fasting, you need to roast Mike for cleansing.
Okay, leave me out of this.
All right, Freddie was a sitcom star in the 70s. His big break was being featured on Johnny Carson, and the days where appearing on The Tonight Show meant everything to a comedian. Unfortunately, Freddie may or may have not accidentally killed himself at the age of 22.
Damn, that story went from inspirational to a Netflix true crime documentary. I think another big influence on us was John Leguizamo, who is not considered a stand-up. He just did a lot of one-man shows like Mambo Mouth and more recently, Latin History for Morons.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the modern-day Latino comedians looked up to him growing up. You know, I liked him so much that I actually forced myself to watch Super Mario Brothers.
I thought he was believable as a magical Italian plumber related to Bob Hoskins. Yeah. Any conversation on Latino stand-ups would not be complete without mentioning George Lopez, all right? I think the strength of George's comedy is that I can still relate to his stories about his Mexican family in California, even as a Puerto Rican in New York.
Yeah, George has Grammy Award-winning comedy albums. His success got him a late-night show and 2 sitcoms.
And his career can be thanked by Eric Estrada being a dick to him when he met him as a teenager.
Oh, Jaime, so what you're saying is that George had a chip on his shoulder?
Okay, I set you up.
You're better than that. You're better than that, Anthony.
I know.
Don't forget the Latina stand-ups. They've also been doing their thing. Women like Ida Rodriguez, Angela Johnson, and Gina Brillon, who recently showed America's She's Got Talent because she was on America's Got Talent.
Okay.
So now we're going to talk to some of the new generation of Latino stand-ups. This is the Translators Podcast. I didn't know we were going to do it.
I thought they said Mike on the...
Let's just start.
Okay. How old were you when you wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and like what drew you to stand-up?
For me, the first time I saw a live stand-up comedy was I was 18. My girlfriend at the time, she took me to see Chris Rock film Kill the Messenger at Apollo, and that's when I saw like stand-up at like the dopest form, like at the Apollo. Had DJ was really dope. Then I went to like a comedy show in one of those like C-level clubs in Times Square that promote that big names are gonna be there, but they never show up. And that's when I saw comedy. Like, damn, this is crazy. But for me, when I was 20, I was in school and I went to a comedy competition, and I saw it was a couple of my friends who did it, and I thought they was funny. And then Chris DiStefano actually headlined, and he just absolutely murdered. And I was just like, nah, I want to do this. Like, to watch him, because it was mostly black kids, and watch Chris up, like white boy, just go up and just leveled. Like, he leveled the room. I had never seen killing like that live, and I was just like, oh, I want to do that. And that's when the chip first got in my head when I was 20, and I started at 21.
And so when you saw that, were you confident that, oh, I could go up there and do the same thing? Or were you like, I gotta start, my Rocky training sessions and get as good as I can get to get that level?
That's actually a good analogy, because I'm kind of like realistic when it comes like that. I wasn't like, oh, I could go up there and do that. Yeah. But I was like, if I train hard, I'll be ready for the fight eventually. So that's the kind of thing where I was like, I think I could get to that point, but I can't do that. And I definitely couldn't have.
At the time.
At the time, yeah.
At the time. Gastor, you grew up in Brooklyn. All right, so
BK, what's up?
And it kind of just oozes off of you, regardless. Just talking with you now. But how did that mold your comedic voice, right? Being from Brooklyn.
It's my worldview. I don't have to do something for it to come out. It's how I view the world. So I think it's a part of the things that I write. It's kind of why I like spaces like this, because one of like the big issues I get into is like, we got a Dominican, like we booked one, or there's already one on a thing. And like, if you don't know us, you don't know the layers of it. Like a Dominican from Harlem, one from the BX, and one from Brooklyn are not the same. But the nuance to that doesn't come out unless you know us and dive in deep. So I think like when you see the two of us on the same lineup, you ain't gonna get the same experience, even though you read the bio and you only get the 2-line bio, you might think we the same dude from, afar.
How do you guys come up with your material? Are you guys just roaming around the street and with a notepad and writing information that you're just gathering there? Like, how does that work during the week, like for you guys to get material? Ian?
For me, I kind of sort of that way. I kind of just try to live my life regularly, and if like a funny idea pops into my phone, I'll put it into my phone as like a bullet point. It's just an idea, and then eventually I'll sit down with it at home and have a bunch of like ideas. I actually had one today that I wrote down. I put in my phone. I was trying to unlock somebody like the other day asked me what was the background of my phone, and it's like Radio City, because I struggle to find what like a good background, because if you put a picture of yourself, they say you're an idiot and you love yourself and you're conceited. So I was like, only reason I want to have a kid is so I can have a background on my phone that people will respect. So like that's just like an idea. Eventually I'll sit down with that and try to like unlock the layers to that and eventually come up with a joke with it.
That's what you say.
And like I think I'm more story centric than like what Ian does. So like for me, anytime I have an extreme emotion, I write down the moment that caused it and all the emotions. So it doesn't even need to be funny. Like if I'm sad, happy, angry, anything like that, I write down the moment, everything that caused it, and then later I try to make that funny. But I'm always about the extreme feeling.
Does this happen to you, where like I'll have an idea when I'm already like in bed, and I'm just too lazy to get up and like write it down. And I'm like, I'm gonna remember this tomorrow morning. And then I wake up and I'm like, what?
All the time.
What was this idea? I should have written it down. I know some people have like the notebooks outside, next to their bed.
All the time. That's actually, that happens to every single comedian. That was an episode of Seinfeld where he went and he couldn't remember the morning.
He couldn't remember the thing. That's a real thing. So always have
like that. Yeah. So like a voice memo now. And my wife got to deal with it. Like I tell her, like, if I'm up, and I think of some shit, and we in bed, just remember the check that's coming later. So I'm gonna say that shit. I don't even like write it. I just grab my phone, voice memo, and I say that shit out loud in the bed. I'm gonna catch that later.
Yeah. It's interesting when you're talking about technology and doing that stuff. Like, do you when you're doing a memo, is it more efficient than writing it down? Like, are you more audio that you listen to it, or is it more where it has to be written? How does
I'm
that
deaf
work for
audio. I only write after the edit. My initial stuff is always out loud written, verbal part of me. So like when I'm coming up with jokes, I'll pace the apartment and I'm recording, saying them out loud. And then afterward, when like I got the idea and I've performed it a couple of times, and even after I have that audio, then I'll transcribe that and I'll edit for, you know, better phrasing and wording. But the initial stuff, like a lot of my friends literally sit and write. I can't do that. I find that I lose the way that I talk naturally when I do that.
Yeah, I'm the like opposite. I like to write it out completely. Like my sets are structured in a way where like I want to produce a laugh as much as I can. So I literally write it line by line. And at the beginning, it's not a laugh every line. But as I'm editing, I'm like, I need to put a joke here. I need to put a joke. Yeah. I try to literally end every sentence in some type of laugh. So when you're watching it all come together, it seems like, man, it's a lot of punch. But I also do the pacing thing. Well, I like pace the apartment because that's a good way to learn it. Yeah. That's no, people don't think about that. Like, you be like, oh, you got to do new material. It's like, all right, I write, but you got to learn the material too. Like, that's like learning a script. Like, it's not the easiest thing. You gotta really do it.
And you gotta be on some quarterback shit because you gotta know audibles.
Right.
You know, like I gotta pivot if this joke ain't land.
Right.
Or if it lands, you gotta have like the 4 tags to stay in the joke.
Right. So and you have to do it live. You gotta. It's not you're not quarterbacking in practice. You're quarterbacking in the game. You gotta learn the things in the game.
Yeah. A question for you too. Do you feel that the process of when you are molding your set, is it coming quicker for you, or is that something you can't rush no matter how experienced you are as a stand-up comedian?
I would say it's not that it comes quicker so much that the other parts of my game are better, so it doesn't hurt as much. Like, I'm a better performer, so like when I'm doing a new joke, I have to be real conscientious that I'm not getting the laughs because of the performance versus the joke is ready. So it makes the process feel faster because I'm not starting off with like, oh, that bombed, because everything sucks, right? It's not like, now at this point I'm well-rounded as a stand-up. I'm trying it out amongst the set where the other jokes probably worked. Like, I'm not going up there with 15 minutes of all trash. So because of all of that, like, there's a cushion, so it never feels like, oh, this joke, like, it's the raw zero beginning point. So to that point, I think it comes off faster emotionally.
Were you gonna play on that?
Yeah, I mean the same. Like I think I definitely write faster now than I did before, just because I know my voice a little better. I know kind of how to get to the point a little quicker than I did at the beginning. But yeah, I'm like, I feel like I just be in competition with myself. So like, I'll write new stuff and I'll like do it where they say you shouldn't do it. Like, I'll write new stuff and I'll do it at a packed house Saturday night at the Cellar, new jokes where, like, going to the stage, I'm like, yo, if this don't work, it's going, it could get ugly for you. So you got to figure out a way to make this work. So whether you got to sell this as do the dance or the words better be funny, but you bomb here, things could get dicey for you. So but I like that, like that challenge. I'll do it.
Speaking of challenges and first starting out as stand-up, did anybody give you some advice early on that made you like kind of illuminate like something that you didn't think, that you just thought, oh, this is stand-up, I'm trying to be funny, I'm making jokes, but I didn't know I wasn't doing this yet. For me, the most important advice that I got, and it's so simple, and at the beginning you really don't understand it because you want more. Like, at the beginning when I used to ask people for advice, and they used to be like, you have to just get on stage, man. You have to just continue to perform every day as much as you can. Just continue. And you're like, yeah, but what else can I do? And it's like, it's nothing else, just that. That's the advice that stuck with me the most, because at first I didn't understand it, because at first I was like, but like, I'm not good. And like, why? Like, it's like somebody saying you got to go to the gym. How do I get big? You got to go to the gym every day. And you're like, but I'm good. Look, I'm athletic. And they're like, yeah, but you have to go to the gym every day. So that's the advice that stuck with me the most. I didn't understand it at first, because I used to be like, but look, I'm athletic. Like, why do I need to, I used to do it, but I didn't really comprehend. That's why I be telling a lot of people who ask me now, who like are a little younger in the game, I'm like, yeah, you gotta go, because I don't care how funny you are. You never gonna like outwork me if I'm going on 5 times a night. Like, that's just common sense. You could be the strongest person in the world. If I'm going to the gym and lifting every single day, there's gonna come a point where, Is you gonna go all in, or is it like a hobby, right?
Right.
There's a big difference.
Right. With that Mamba mentality right there.
Yo, he got
saw that right there? So I'm going 5 days, big. 5 times a day. What you doing?
Montages, gym.
That's it.
Yeah.
While I'm doing stand-up, I'm doing push-ups. Are you doing that? You need to ask yourself. Gastor, for you, do you have a circle of trust? Being that you went in and you took a class and you did stand-up, do you have a circle of trust that you get feedback from, that you could say, okay, cool, that you trust? How's that work for you?
I have other comics that I definitely bounce ideas off of prior to the quarantine in particular. Like I had an informal meetup where once a week we had to defend the premise. So before we even got on stage to deliver the joke, if the premise is real, you can argue it. So and in turn you'd end up getting arguing points from it. My boy Mike Harrison had a joke idea of why flossing isn't allowed in public. He's it doesn't make, there's more disgusting things that we do than floss, and floss has a health habit. So before making it funny, we just all had to argue the points of it. So we just yelling about flossing on the train and shit as a group. But it ends up giving you other ideas on how to defend the joke and other lines to go with it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in having a crew of people you could go to, deliver jokes and let you know, hey, that's hack, hey, that's whack, you've done better before. And then also let you know when shit is dope. Yeah, keep going in that direction. When you're slacking to kind of do things that are a bit edgier, so on and so forth.
How do you guys separate constructive criticism from just someone hating? You know what I'm saying? Just really? Thank you for that criticism. Yeah, but I mean, yeah. So
I think intention and source is really what it comes down to me. I'll take criticism from anybody, even if they're not qualified. I'm not going to put it into practice necessarily, but I'll listen to it if you're genuinely being trying to be helpful. Right. But the source is what tends to signify whether or not I'm actually going to put it into practice. If you're a peer, someone I respect, I'll definitely put it into practice. For sure. And also, while I won't take direct advice from an audience member, I will take advice from the audience. They're the people. Yeah. So I'm listening to every set. If y'all laugh, that's the feedback. So yeah, source and the actual shit you're saying.
But with the audience, it's interesting because it could be a night where you were off and it's the audience didn't laugh, but that joke is still solid. It was just me, right?
Well,
you know what I mean?
To Ian's point, that's why you do it five times a night.
Yeah, because the audience be wrong too.
Yeah. And the audience might be off. They just might be
right.
Do you do that live? You're like, guys, that was funny.
I try not to do that. I try not to do that because they don't care. No, people do that. But when I see that,
they get pissed off.
Yeah, when I see that, I'm like, bro, I don't care what TV show you did this joke on. It didn't work tonight. They don't find it funny. That's it. So I try not to do that. But as a comic, you want to do it. You want to be like, oh, y'all ain't find that funny? Jimmy Fallon did. But you don't. But you don't do it.
I ain't gonna name drop.
We're all humans. We want to do it, but
you want a Julius Randle thumbs down to the fans.
To the fans, right?
YouTube me, okay?
You were on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon.
Yes.
As a stand-up comedian, what's your headspace going into that and knowing that a lot of people are going to see you? How do you keep yourself focused for when you're about to perform in a late night show?
Yeah, it's a tough process. Most people have a little bit of a advance on when they're gonna do it. They know you're gonna do it in 2-3 months or whatever. You have kind of time to prepare. When the booker asked me for a tape, I submitted a tape. He was like, "Can you do this in 14 days?" Which is a real quick turnaround because I had submitted the tape a month prior and I wasn't really doing those jokes anymore. So I kind of had to get back into the rhythm of those jokes and kind of do it. But when you're doing something like that in New York City, all the comedy clubs and everybody who runs shows, they all want to help. So they're like, hey man, come run your set. So I was doing it I was running those 5 minutes about 3-4 times a night for the whole, on weekends 6-7 times. Wow. Just doing those 5 minutes. So by the time the day came, the nerves wasn't so much as I was anxious because I was so done with the material because when you do it so robotically, every night, it gets so tiring. So I remember just a couple days before I did the Tonight Show, I was kind of in my head about it where I had to speak to some of the OGs who did it where I was like, yo, I think I'm going to bomb on TV. I think I'm just going to bomb in the middle, for the whole country because the material doesn't feel natural it does. But then the night before, I went out with the booker and we hit up all the clubs and we did the Cellar, which I wasn't working at the time, and I had a good set there and you kind of had the confidence going into it. So on the day of, I was kind of very anxious, but I was like, yeah, let's do it. Don't let your nerves get the best of you. You do this and you put in your work. Like that's the thing that I found like nerves and anxious. Like if you put in the work, you'll be anxious. That's normal human thing. But the nerves, you're like, nah, I do this. I do this every night. I should be okay in front of a studio audience who wants me to succeed. So that was kind of the mentality.
I'm curious, when you're doing stand-up, especially when you're doing some of the clubs where it's it's very intimate.
Yeah.
How is the vibe, the beat when you're performing late night in the space where the audience is over there? Like, what's going through your mind?
It's definitely different. It's definitely different, and it's definitely awkward because you kind of like don't really know how to stand because you're like it's such a big
we're
gap.
sitting for the show right now.
Yeah, you're like, is this good? Is this good? But again, like usually on those late night sets, like the audience are on your side. It's not the Apollo. They don't want to boo you off. Before you come on, Jimmy like gives you like a great introduction where he's like, guys, this next guy, like he's my friend. Like I like him. I want you guys to enjoy him. We brought him here to make you guys laugh. So we want you guys to show him a lot of love. So you're set up to succeed. So that helps. And it's a studio audience. There's like a lot of applause breaks, a lot of things. So it's definitely different than the club, but they're on your side.
Yeah, they have the straight up applause. So it's like, yo, keep shining that shit, please.
No, they don't do that during the set. They don't. No, they don't do that during the set. Okay. They do have the applause, but they don't do that during the set because who's to say when when you should applause?
Yeah, you're in the middle like that. That wasn't that wasn't a joke.
Right.
That wasn't a
If
joke,
it's just a guy pressing the button,
run it back.
Guy's like, okay, that was another joke.
Yeah,
All right, I'm gonna hit the button. That's a lot of work.
Organically, I feel like an audience just knows when, like, to do it, like organically, and there's always like a few of them that started in the crowd who like, no, that deserves an applause break. But yeah.
I've seen a lot of those talk show ones where it's like sometimes you think like it starts slow and then those comedians end up like that second half of their thing is so like it's almost like they structured it where it's like I know you're not gonna laugh out loud right away.
Right.
I'm gonna hit you at the end with my second half of
right.
shit.
Yeah.
And then it's like standing ovations.
Yeah.
Right? It's interesting. Sometimes you see some of these talk show performances. A lot of it is strategic, right? It's like I know I'm gonna get these people, on my side by the end. But
of course, yeah.
We started the show talking about you're both Dominican, but we have different experiences. A part of my question is, do you have Dominican relatives that listen to your stuff and be like, loco, tú no estás hablando, you're not talking more about Dominican stuff, what's up? So how does that, with your experiences that I've listened to your stuff, you're not throwing Dominican all the time. Where does that come from, the decision? And do you have people in your family that are like, yo, you should throw more Dominican jokes in?
For me, I'll answer. It's really not my family. It's mostly like just fans, like people, who just see me and they'll just be like, hey, you need to be talking about this. You need to be talking about that. I have a thing where like, I think it's so important, and I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to like shade the whole thing that we're doing, but like, I don't even really like the term Latino comedian. Like, I don't like that. I was doing an interview just last week for this newspaper, and he kept saying Latino comedian, and then even at the end he was like, what are some other Latino comedians that you know? And I was like, I don't know any Latino comedians, and I named 5 Latino comedians who were just comedians. You were one of them. I didn't know you were going to be here, but I did mention you.
Nice.
No doubt. But yeah, I don't like that phrase. I feel like it does us a disservice. I've had this conversation with like Ida Rodriguez. That's like, she's like my big sister, and we've had this conversation where it's like, I think the main level, like once you reach like being seen, like the main level of being seen is like when a white man gets able to tell his story and it has to be about nothing. Like when you could tell a story about nothing, it doesn't have to be about like how your parents came here, or about a white guy get up there and sell a TV show about working at a coffee shop, and they'll be like, this is great. I feel like that's the level of bringing a culture. Like, yes, it's important to tell our story and it's important to like push our things forward, but I think it's very important to like, we also want the freedom that we're just people. We're just like ever. Like, there's no such thing as a white comedian. Why do they just get comedian, but we get Latino comedian? I don't get it, because we're Latino. Well, they're white. What's the difference? We should be able to speak about whatever you want to speak to. If you want to speak about your tias and the chancletas, I mean, it's been done, but do it. You know?
And it goes back to what Gastor was saying about, just you see a couple of, 2 Dominicans on the same, like, the show, and they're not necessarily gonna have the same material.
Yeah.
So you're gonna put them in a Dominican comedian vibe. So
Yeah.
forget Latinos. It's like I got two Dominican comedians here. So I mean, it's people like to put everyone in a box.
Yeah.
Because it's convenient, right?
Right.
And it sells kind of. If it's an article or something like that, it's like 5 Latino comedians to watch.
Yeah.
But after a while, it's just everybody's just trying to do the same thing and make people laugh.
Yeah, the interview, like, he didn't even mean, but I just felt like he was shading Latino, because he was like honestly giving me a compliment, but the way he was wording it didn't sound like a compliment to me, because he was just like, he knows, like, he was a guy who knows comedy. He wasn't like a thing. He's like, yeah, because all the Latino comics that I know speak about a certain way, but see, like, you're not like that. Like, you have more of like a mainstream appeal. Like, he was saying that, but I was like, what? Yeah. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I just talk about what I experienced. I mentioned being Dominican in my set. It's not the whole thing, but we talk about whatever we want to talk about. It's not.
Because I identify as Dominican, but it's not my whole identity.
Right.
And that's what I think gets people thrown off. He's a Latino and he's a comedian, but he's not a Latino comedian.
Right.
He's a comedian who happens to be Latino. It's a part of his story. It's not his whole story. Right. And I think that's kind of like what we're trying to get to next. And like, I feel like I don't need to tell a joke about being Dominican to represent being Dominican. My last name says it. As soon as I'm on stage, I'm repping. Like, that's it. Like, my presence is repping, right? But yeah, like, I get that, and like, if it's coming, and again, intention. So like, if it comes from a Dominican fan, I appreciate that, because you're so excited that you haven't seen enough of us. You're asking for more representation. I fuck with that all day. Yeah. But like, when it comes from like someone that ain't from the culture and it sounds sideways, like it sounds like a qualifier, I get a little like edgy with that. You know what I mean? Like for example, I'm from East New York. I never want someone to be like, yo, he's the funniest Dominican East New York comic from Fulton Ave. Like, at that point, that shit don't mean nothing no more. Yeah. You know, like,
not specific too, but
like, over that filter, like, you just eliminated the whole compliment that you were trying to say.
Right.
You know, so yeah, I'm big on that, like, energy.
Yeah. I one thing, like, when I get it from a fan, it's not that, like, I feel like I understand that they think I'm funny and they want to hear my point of view or my perspective on whatever it is that they experience. But like, part of, I don't know, I just be thinking like bigger down, like we're first generation, some second generation. Our kids are gonna be second or third generation. Like, our kid, like, for us, if I marry another first generation Dominican and we have a Dominican child, their experiences are not gonna be what my parents' experiences was. So I'm trying to like raise what people think about us. Like, so they're just normal people, because if not, then we're not growing. Like, we happen to be from a time where like people immigrated to this country, our parents came to this country, but most of the people I know are now born here and raised here. So their upbringing is not the same. I'm sure your kids' upbringing is not the same exactly as yours, right? You gotta.
My son is soft as shit.
Right.
Mad every day.
Right.
I love him. Like, he's a dope kid, but he's not the same guy. Yeah.
Right. And there has to be a path for him. When if he wants to be a comedian, there has to be somebody that he could be like, oh, this person, he was like this person. Or if not, he's gonna have to carry the load. So I feel like, not that I'm like distinct, but I take on that of like, nah, I'm not the Latino guy. I'm sorry if that's what you want. There's a lot of those guys that do the Latino thing, and you put them in front of a Latino crowd and they absolute murder. They make me laugh. They make everybody laugh. But that's not what I do. It's not what you do.
Yeah, and that worldview is natural to that person.
Yeah,
so that's dope. Yeah, do it. You are that part of the voice.
Right.
And like, we are part of like being Dominican and being comics, but we're not just that. And like, when we get to a point to where all of us are representative of that separately and differently, I think that's when it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I want to get to. Whereas like, realistically, like, how many Dominican or any Latin-centric sitcoms are there?
Yeah.
There aren't, right? But to his point, it's not viewed as a white-centric sitcom. So
it's just a sitcom.
It's just a sitcom.
Yeah.
But like, if one Dominican got the sitcom, that's the only sitcom we get in for like 5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like, that's fully indicative of our whole, like, you know, all of us. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, yeah.
And it's crazy too, because if that one doesn't succeed, or the assumption is that it's a Dominican show, all the Dominicans are gonna love that show.
Yeah,
and
but we're not enough though. We got it, you know, we're not, if you was doing it in DR, it'd be great. You get, the whole country would be, but this country's not mostly Dominican. So if we want to be allowed in, we gotta allow the other people into our, into our house. That's just what it is. We live in a country where we're not the majority yet.
I like how you ended it.
Doing numbers out there. You about to have 16 kids.
Right. We got to keep it growing.
Do it
man.
up, baby.
Nielsen's come to our house. There's 16 of us. We'll get that over there.
Soft ass kids.
I love my son. He's dope. But this dude, real talk, man. I don't know what the hell he's into on a regular. Dude, like yesterday, I had to order freaking. He wanted to get into freaking coding and mushroom growth. So that's not East New York to me. Like that kid is just weird. He's like his whole wall is just mushrooms that he grows. Like he's like, I'm really into fungi, Dad. I love like bioclad. And that's a Dominican kid from Brooklyn. That's not this.
You're like,
Dominican
I'm a fungi too, but I don't know what this shit is.
No, I don't know that. But to your point,
in a way though, that's a luxury. That's a good thing. Because I was born in East New York too. I grew up in East New York. I moved to Queens when I was 11, and when I was born in the 90s, that wasn't the thing. You couldn't do that. It was a lot of drugs. It was a lot of crime, and that's why you're the way you are. It's a luxury that you're able to give your kid a life where mushroom growing is like
it's cool. Yeah,
that's
you can do that comfortably. Like you don't feel ashamed about it. I would have hid that shit for years.
Right.
Like, I still
dope.
like even as a parent, I hid it for a long time. That was my instinct. Like I can't have people out here knowing my son doing this nonsense.
Nah, fact.
But I love that. Like that's the evolution of where he is now, and he's cool doing that. And that's gonna be another Dominican experience one day. That you could do that.
Right.
So a lot of old school comedians complain about the cancel culture and how they can't say what they want to say. You're kind of like this new, current generation, right? And so I want to hear your opinions on, do you really feel cancel culture's constricting your, creativity? Like, or you're just like, look, I'm going to say what I don't really think about it. I say what I think is funny, and I don't consider my material problematic or, something of that nature. But Gastor.
Oh.
Go! This is
racing.
at the same time.
Same time.
We're gonna Mortal Kombat this, all right? Whoever
canceled each other out.
yeah, we'll go Ian.
No. I mean, to those guys, I'm like, listen, man. The business changed. Things changed. There's a new speed limit. This is the speed limit now. You got to abide by what the speed limit is. I mean, I grew up in East New York where, people used to say, the F word, not the fuck, but speaking derogatory of gay people. But I never heard anybody in my whole circle ever say that to a gay person. They would only say it if you into growing mushrooms. That's what they
That'd been wild on that list.
Right. That's what they would say back then. So that's how I grew up. But as I got older, they was like, yo, this is not cool. It's not cool to say this. You can't speak like this. So I don't speak like that. I don't understand why they feel like cancel culture. It's a real thing, but when it comes to the term, you gotta adapt, man. In the 90s, you was able to do a lot. Yeah, you could talk how you want. You used to also be able to sexually harass women in the workplace. That used to be normal in the 90s. It's not today, so you can't do it. Same thing with the thing. People offended. You offended somebody. Now there is people who just get offended off nothing. With them, it's like I can't help you there. Like this is clearly a joke, and you taking it personally. But for the most part, those words that people don't like to say, I mean. And I still feel like you could say it, but just the joke gotta be so good that the level is really high. So I don't feel like the words are off limit. It's just that joke better be like Louis got the joke saying the N-word, one of the best jokes ever written, and no black person I know ever got upset about it. They was like, this is just a good ass joke. So to those old guys, I'll say, nah, you could say it. But you can't just call somebody in the audience that thinking you're going to get a laugh like it's funny.
Yeah, you can't Kramer that shit.
Right.
That was a whole different thing, but
Right. You got to craft it. You could say it.
I actually was I think he's the perfect example to that, where you have an awesome joke about identity, where the pronouns.
The pronouns.
He embodies that shit, and he presents a worldview that is clearly his, isn't offensive, and that's all it is. You have to. I think people can read if it's coming from a place of hate. Anyone that's been canceled, in my opinion, kind of deserved it. You know what I mean? I feel like that's not something that most of us have to worry about, because I think the audience can read our intention. We're trying to express something about ourselves, and as long as you're doing that and being authentically you, and you're a good person, good things are gonna come out. With that said, I do think there's a little bit of like leeway we deserve when working on a joke. I do think that's different. You know, like if you see me at a club and I mess up a joke, call me out on it at the room by booing or not laughing. But you shouldn't necessarily like say I'm a bad person because I misphrased the joke that day. And now if I do that at a taping, then call me out, because that means I decided after working this joke 100 times that this is representative of me and I want the world to see it as a art piece. Yeah. But in the room, when I'm working stuff, things might go wrong. And I apologize. Let me know, definitely, by either you know, not laughing, send me an email, whatever the case may be, and I'll get that feedback and pivot. But in terms of like cancel culture being a real thing, I don't feel that, because I feel like I'm a good person and I'm genuinely not making material with that intention of shock value or offending. So it won't come out that way.
And nobody's outside the comedy club with pitchforks already.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
also, I don't know many comedians who's been canceled for words, like for jokes. Yeah. I mean, like people say, oh, Chappelle's not canceled. Chappelle's about to win another Grammy. He's getting $20 million per thing. He sells out every single show. Yeah. It's just a couple people on the internet that write stuff. That's not like canceled. I don't think for words it's a real thing. For actions, of course, there's people who have lost it. But like just words on stage, nah, it's just a couple people be like, this is offensive, and they'll go away like with.
And I think even some of the people that complain about cancel culture, some of the comedians, that's part of their bit as well. Yeah, you know, it's kind of like, I'm gonna lean into being the old guy who's just like, and some people take it as that, oh, they're never gonna change, you know, like they're stubborn to change and stuff like that. So I mean, you never really know who's at home stewing about like, I can't say what I want to say, or it's like
sometimes I feel like they are though. Sometimes I feel like some of these old guys. I'm like, bro, it's to take on the challenge, right? A craft, a masterful joke that you can't debate is a good joke. Like they're out there. I mean, I think Chappelle does it pretty well. You know, I think he does it. People, but they just want to be able to say it like loosely, like with no like thing. And it's like, well, people get offended, so you can't say that no more about that.
Bars.
Stand-up comedians are not only doing stand-up. You guys have a podcast. Can you tell us how doing podcasting lends yourself when it comes down to doing stand-up comedy, like in that medium? How does that help?
Can I ask, why'd you get all sexy for that question? Like, I don't know what's happening. He's like, yo, you know what I mean?
Like, hey,
well, that was like, because I was in stand-up, I was in podcast mode. So
okay, I get like that. Like, okay,
I was talking to you as a fellow podcaster. Yeah, no, as a fellow podcaster.
We don't just do comedy now, Gastor. You got a podcast.
Fact. I'm gonna cancel you because of that,
bro. So yeah, how does podcasting kind of lend to like into what I do?
Yeah.
A few things. One podcast I do, the War Report, with the homie Chalet with Sharp. It's a few things came from that. Like one, we started it during the quarantine, so it was a way for us to kind of just stay fresh and like work out when we couldn't do it live. Two. Chalet and I in particular, like all my material is real like family centric and like about what directly happened to me. And she's real like about things like she observes in her day-to-day life. And we realized that we just didn't talk much about topics that were in the news. So it was a cool way to kind of offer a worldview to our fans about stuff that we weren't feeling like, oh, I'm burning material. So it was just a way to give people that like are rooting for us and want to listen to us something that we can easily repeat and give them and provide them with without necessarily burning the stuff that we're prepping for the album. And I think that's important. I think building that kind of community with your audience, the people that really vibe with you, is immensely invaluable. Like besides the fact that they get to hear more and more about your voice and get to learn who you are as a person, you get information. You know where they are. You get to know where to do shows. Like because of the podcast, instead of like figuring out how to do a tour, I go to the cities like, oh, I had 3,000 listeners in this city. I'm going to go there because clearly they want me there. Like they want to listen to me. That's dope. So podcasting is that. It's like a way of me directly connecting with the people that already are connected to my content and, being able to like respond to that.
That's dope. Awesome.
Final question. With so many distractions in the world, social media, what advice do you have for up-and-coming comedians to just stay focused in their craft,
for people trying to do any art form in general is I don't think you need to fall in love with the idea of doing it full time right away. I think that more and more people, you can have a valuable and incredible career in any art form after work, A. B, stabilize. Like, a big part of why I feel like I was able to go full time is because I owned my house. You know, like, and I did a ton of work at a regular job. I put down a down payment, and now I don't have to worry about rent. That's a huge advantage I had over most of my peers, where like year 3, you're trying to grind 5 shows after work.
That's tough.
I quit my job, and I was able to do every open mic and every show for like 2 years.
You gotta have a game plan.
Have a plan. Like, really roll it out. Don't just be like gun ho on some like, oh, I'm YOLO this shit and quit my job and whatever, because that's what you hear, like the dream story. It works every now and then for some people. Quit everything and do that, sure, but that's not a real plan. You really want to win, you got to make sure to set yourself up to win. Make sure you got the economics worked out so that you can pursue this when it doesn't pay that well until it does.
Right. Yeah. And what your question was on the social media thing, right? Do you?
Yeah, because I think like you guys are using your phone as an advantage with technology doing a voice memo, but then there's also to be like, oh, I gotta start writing. But hold on, let me go on my
I gotta be better. Like, I don't have a TikTok, and I really just have an Instagram. I don't really tweet that much. I gotta be better because there is a tool. Like, it is a tool that helps, and it can. Like, especially if you're a person who's put into work, it can take you to that next level with the fan stuff. But I don't know, man. I think I'm just such a purist. Like, I'm really obsessed with stand-up comedy. Like, my mom, when my mom got sick with cancer earlier in the year, and like, it was literally the only thing that was keeping me going. Like, in the darkest time, I would take care of her the whole day and go perform at night. And it was the only form of like any type of happiness that I would get the whole day. And it made me grow a different level of respect for the art, because I knew that for me, it was the only thing keeping me going. And then, like, as it went on, I started to think, but how many people in the audience bought a ticket for that reason? Because they want to get away from whatever situation they're dealing with at home. And I'm the person that they're literally like giving money to me for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, whatever it is, to do that for them. So I just got like I had a whole new level of respect for art that I've already respected and loved. So,
and that's the power of stand-up, that you're going through a tough time in personal life, but you can still, it's not like, how can I be funny? It's like, no, this is what I do. Like, I'm gonna go out there and whatever's going on in my personal life, I can go up on stage and just be.
I needed, like, I mean, I always thought this was what I did, but it's different when you like experience it, like getting a phone call, finding out like, the worst news that somebody could get, and, being like, all right, and do, go on stage and rock the house and then deal with whatever the emotions that come after that. That's a difficult, that you got to, when you experience that, then you like, oh, no, this is what I do. That for me, more than like the Tonight Show, more than like HBO, more than any credit, for me, that was what solidified me as like, oh, no, I'm a stand-up comedian, was like that shit.
That's real. Thanks for coming to the show, fellas. That was an awesome episode. We want to thank our guests, Gastor Almonte,
Ian Lara,
and Anthony, who...
Yes. Anthony, thank you for not logging off and all that great research.
We couldn't have done this without you. I mean, we could have, but...
Sort of difficult. And it's interesting to see you, like, you're like there and we're here.
Yeah, it's the future.
And of course, like we do every show, we are going to drink from our personalized translator mugs. Okay. This milk is expired, I think.
Oh, all right. I don't think that's milk.